kind of like car buying on steroids. You can go in thinking I want something. They're going to come to table with the entire car line. Are you ready for that? The options are endless. So kind of having someone that can walk with you and channel out some of the noise maybe is one thing, because you can very easily get overwhelmed.
Good morning. This is Mitch Tarr, founder and CEO of Zinn Marketing Inc. I would like to introduce you today to Mike Packer. He's the CEO and founder of SupplyTechUS.com, and he knows more about 3PL and supply chain. He's already forgotten more about 3PL and supply chain than I will ever know. But from a marketing perspective, it's really useful to understand the synergy between the business operations and the back end, the 3PL that actually makes it work. So Mike has some really great insights. We appreciate his time for today, and let's dive right in and talk. Hello, Mike.
Hi, Mitch. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you today?
I'm doing well.
Excellent. Well, let's just jump in. Maybe tell us, to get us oriented in what SupplyTech does and where you fit into the scheme of things.
Yeah, so SupplyTech, we're a supply chain engineering focused organization. So we help customers, large, small, somewhere along kind of an automation journey, whether they're looking at an existing warehouse and it's all manual. So we know to stay competitive, we need to get some form of automation in, whether it's AI reporting all the way through robotics, ASRS systems, lights out type concepts. And then, partner with certainly a bunch of different OEMs just to learn, kind of stay up on industry trends.
Yeah. So for your type of business, who are your primary customers?
Really, it's either 3PLs or the end users. So, it could be a startup e-commerce company that is looking purely to, hey, I've outgrown my garage startup phase. We just took on 50,000 square feet of warehouse space. We're no longer 1,000 orders a day. We're at 20,000 orders a day. What can we do to scale and keep up? So we're not creating tails, where, I get 20,000 today, but I can only process 10,000. So I got to roll 10,000 till tomorrow. Then I get another 20,000. So, 2 shifts, 3 shifts, working over the weekends, which ultimately is going to create burnout at some point.
Yep. So what are some of the characteristics that so talk about e-commerce maybe in particular, what are some of the characteristics that they would be feeling where they'd need to call you?
Yeah, I'd say the first one is just, we're at a point where our current staffing is maxed out on orders. So we know we've hit that threshold of, typically it's around 1,000 to 2,000 orders a day, with, I'd say, a 50,000 square foot operation or smaller, where they're going to start to feel it. They're going to start running into potentially overtime, or, hey, let's see who can come in on the weekend and work. That's really where, like myself or my team can come in and say, okay, let's take baby steps. Where are you? What kind of WMS are you using? What kind of software packages? Because I can help guide too on who we would recommend to bring in, or work with them to bring in. Because some are really easy. They're agnostic on software. Others are, pretty set. They're going to want significant, 6 figures or more, to start doing integration if it's not a top 3 WMS player. As an example. So we kind of talk them through, okay, here's those scenarios to look for, because obviously dropping $300,000 on a project may not be a 3 or 5 year ROI, based on the size of company.
Yeah.
That you are.
And when people are using you, is it primarily an ROI that they're looking for, or looking more for an outsource partner, somebody that is trusted to handle everything?
It's a little bit of both. So there are companies where I'll help end to end. So evaluate their current operation, make recommendations, run the RFPs, help them implement, and then, through the implementation handoff, make sure their team on the floor feels comfortable with everything. And then there's those that are just, hey, we're kind of window shopping, if you will. What are given where we're at, and they'll just, give me a month's worth, a year's worth of data. What do you recommend and what do you think we're going to spend? So it's truly a, one into the other of the gamut. I've had some where it's just, will you just come look at our operation? Like maybe there's just things we can do setup wise that are better than what we're currently doing.
Yeah. So in the 3PL space for e-commerce stores, is it a competitive space? Are there a lot of companies trying to do it?
So there's, I would say most of your 3PLs out there all have a retail/e-commerce division. So yes, you can go anywhere from a single, maybe it's a, father, son, husband, wife that set up a distribution center because a friend of theirs started a company and they started helping them, and they have a, 50, 100,000 square foot building. I'm outside of Chicago. So maybe it's, outside Chicago, and they specialize in something very unique. And that's all they do. And then you have others where it's maybe they're more regional. So they're in the Northwest or Southeast. As an example, I have 6, 7 warehouses, but they kind of just stay in that geography and support their customers. And then certainly you go up from there and you get, your major players, your UPSs, Geodis's, FedEx, DHL, GXO, the, global companies in, across the US, across Canada, Mexico. So depending on where you're at in your journey, that may be an option.
Yeah. So then how would you distinguish yourself as being different from other firms like that?
I would say what differentiates us is we went to school for engineering or business, but then we worked in operations. We worked for the companies doing what we're helping other companies do. So we didn't take an academic approach, graduate college, get into consulting, kind of go up the ladder that way, where it's always been within one organization, within, their way of operating, and they're proposing or creating proposals. We've been on the floor. I've been through the implementations that are awesome. I've been through the implementations that were not. There's definitely lessons learned that you can certainly talk people through, and you can create your checklist and everything. But unless you've lived it, it's a completely different experience. And you can start to see things when you're working on projects too, start to lean one way or another, because you've been there. So you can catch it quicker, and try to help right size before, it gets, I won't say too far gone, but before it becomes a bigger issue than just, hey, let's pause for a day. Let's have a reset on expectations, or let's have a reset of where we actually are in the project, or with IT integrations, or just who's going to own it on the floor. It's an easy thing to have, outside help, the OEMs, the integrators, whoever you're working with on the floor doing it, but they're not going to be on the floor every day. The operators, the engineering team on site, at some point, they're going to own it. So if they can be there while everyone's on site, working through troubleshooting, working through a go live, it makes a huge difference for that team's success. Once everyone else is, hey, project's closed out, we're live, it's 90 days after go live, it's 5 days after go live, depending on the complexity and the scope, to be able to hand over to that operations team or local on-site team that's going to be running the day-to-day. So they have the confidence to, know how to fix it as things come up, and it's not everyone's down for 2-3 hours because we got to call somebody and we're waiting on them to call us back and everything, when maybe it's as simple as on a HMI screen, it's red. You have to go hit a reset button, but if they're not part of all the onboarding of the technology and stuff before then, it may be simple things they didn't know.
Yeah. Do you find it different trying to deploy in a mature company versus in a fresh new company that's on a trajectory to the moon?
It's both of them have their challenges. I think when you get to a smaller company that's in high growth, the challenge normally becomes, do they have someone that they've hired or is on board that's going to own it long term, that can be part of everything, because they're being pulled in 30 different directions because they have just so much going on. So that becomes a little bit more of the challenge that I've seen kind of in the startups or the smaller companies that are just scaling rapidly, versus you go to the other side and the larger organizations, you get a lot of the red tape. Oh, well, I can only do this piece. You have to talk to this person because that's their wheelhouse. You get a lot of, instead of a team of 3 or 4 people making decisions, you get a team of 12. And then there's a lot of times, a lot more debates that are going on over, well, this makes the operator on the floor's life easier, but now maybe that's IT that has to do coding. And they're like, well, I don't want to spend 12 hours coding. So you start getting into just a different dynamic.
Yeah. Um, in terms of SupplyTech itself, how do you go about doing your prospecting?
So right now, most of our prospecting is either word of mouth or through existing customers, or we have relationships with some different integrators and other some boutique consulting companies that maybe focus more on transportation, and then we'll help them on inside the 4 walls so they can help carry their services in, or even represent some companies where they're looking to do full scope end to end, kind of like a Deloitte or PricewaterhouseCoopers type setup, but they're just smaller. So we'll work with them on being kind of their engineering arm.
Yeah. So, what would I call that? Channels or partnerships or strategic partners?
Correct.
Did you fall into that strategy, or was it something you consciously planned out and executed?
No, from the get go, it just kind of happened that way. When I started SupplyTech back in 2024, it was really a phone call to 2 people. One ended up being, is a good channel partnership that I have with them. And it was just, they had retired from a previous organization, worked together. They just said, hey, if you ever need anything, call me. And then another one was actually an old boss of mine and was a mentor throughout my career as well. He's just CEO of a 3PL. And I called him and just said, I'm starting this. Do you need any engineering support? So that was kind of the first 2 phone calls, first 2 customers. And from there, it's, morphed out and grown. And a lot of the startup technology companies who in the past, when I was with the 3PLs, would call on, look at what's the latest technology you're developing. Some of them actually reach out to me and are like, we're talking to customers, but we don't have the skill set to fill everything they're looking for, because our technology is focused as just a ASRS, automated storage and retrieval system. We don't have the expertise on sorting. We don't have the expertise on packaging. And so they've called me up, and I've partnered with them to, go to their customer and say, okay, here's things you can bolt on so you have a more end-to-end solution.
Yeah. And when you're working with these, I guess, thinking of the e-commerce companies,
Mhm.
And you start to get them sorted out, do they then start asking you other questions like, hey, we've got our 3PL covered. Now we like to talk about this.
Yeah. So actually, right before this, I had a call with one of the OEMs that I've helped support, put a solution together for him. That customer came back in his returns operation. Well, it's a new customer of theirs. It's focused only on apparel versus the one we did before was, apparel, toys, games. It was, the whole gamut. So it's been interesting because they've come back and now they're like, all right, if we only focus on apparel, and then there's the e-commerce side, but then there's also our stores. So looking at, things we've already developed with them IT wise, but now saying, okay, well, if you're going to ship, back to someone's home, traditionally that's polybags. Let's set up workstation stuff to where they can get the product, put the label on it, put it in the bag, send it right out the door, versus if now you want to send stuff back to a store, traditionally using a box. So with them, we're actually looking at within the ASRs itself, they're typically always tote based. We're now looking at using cardboard trays. There's that will store the product, but now when it comes out, if it goes straight to a store, we can just send it down a line. They put a lid on top of the box, put the shipping label and out the door. So I don't even have anyone touching it. It's completely automated out the door.
Wow.
And it's just because they're like, well, we want both out of this building. It's like, okay, just my expertise working with a lot of the packaging companies in the past. It's kind of a phone call. Sometimes say, hey, can you all do this? Other times, I know their technology well enough. We can just say, okay, this is a good one to use. Or here's the two companies. Do you have a preference? Do you want to run an RFP? So both of them are competitive. Do you just want to know, the pros and cons of each one and you call them and make the decision? We're very open to allowing them to do it themselves, or we will help them do it.
Yeah. So with your channel partners and with your word of mouth referrals from existing customers, are you getting pulled along to grow faster than you're comfortable with? Or are you, how are you dealing with the challenge of keeping up basically?
So far it's been, I'd say, linear. It's faster than I would have ever imagined just a year ago. But so far able to, based on projects and ask, kind of forecast out when I think, I'll need to add on someone full-time versus work with, a lot of ex-colleagues, mine, they'll jump in and help, as like a 1099 type resource.
Yeah.
To me. Cause they're not looking for anything full-time. They're just like, hey, if you get something, I'll run it by them. Like, oh, that sounds like fun. I'll bring them in. So there's some of that. And so far that's been able to sustain. I have looked at, what it would take, bring on someone full-time, because naturally then you get into the benefits and different things on just, what is all that takes. So I've started that journey, just to educate myself, get more familiar with everything that's going to be required. Because certainly at that point, it's not just a salary for somebody. There's a lot of extras to add in. Want to make sure I know what that looks like. So I've definitely been learning a lot more in the HR benefit side of things than I would have ever imagined in the past.
I would imagine. So in the space of your digital marketing footprint or your digital footprint, being a relatively new business, how have you approached that?
So right now I'd say it's minimal. I do have a franchise as well that I'm absentee for. So with that one, I brought in a CMO, like a marketing firm that kind of acts as your, as your chief marketing officer, if you will. I brought them in for that. I mean, that's a lot of, on the digital side, certainly the website's big. Everything with AI now is more geared around what's in your website, what's on your Facebook page, your LinkedIn page, your Google profile, that ties in. So if someone wants, engineering support are keywords in there that yours is going to pop up first. So I've learned a lot more on that side, how things are truly working. And then, you get into the Facebook marketing, and that's it's all your views and your clicks and your trends, compared to competitors in the space and different things. So it's an interesting dynamic for sure.
So you're saying, in addition to the supply tech business, you have a whole separate another franchise business?
I do. Yes.
Yeah.
And that one is
So
purely, it's home services. So, I mean, that's all geared around really, your either word of mouth or how you're marketing to the demographics in your area or your territory, since it's a franchise. So with that one, it's a lot of, all right, we need 10-second clips, because if people are scrolling on Facebook, if they see, a clip, they stop for a second. Oh, that's interesting. And then, they click more info, or you start getting information out of them. How long did they stop? How long, um, you know, did they provide any information, or did they just click it to get to your website to, look at some information? So it's interesting, everything that can be captured just from stopping for a fraction of a second on, a feed or something off Facebook or LinkedIn. Surprised me, but it makes sense.
yeah,
Everything's digital nowadays.
yeah. So if you were to give some advice to an e-commerce store when they're starting to feel the pain, uh, uh, what would you advise them? How would they approach this 3PL or this supply chain challenge?
I'd say certainly interview and talk with a company before you select them to work with them. Um, if you feel you're at the point and you need a 3PL partner, if you've never been in that space before and understand how it works, I would certainly reach out to a consulting firm to help you with that first one, to build your RFP, run the RFP, help you with the selection. They're all good. There's nuances to everything, as there is in life. So it's kind of like car buying on steroids. You can go in thinking I want something. They're going to come to table with the entire car line. Are you ready for that? The options are endless. So kind of having someone that can walk with you and channel out some of the noise maybe is one thing, because you can very easily get overwhelmed. And then while you're meeting with them, kind of gauge, look around, do the site tours. How are employees in the warehouse? Does everyone seem happy to be there, or they seem like they're just there because they can't work somewhere else, or that's was the only thing available to them or in that area? Because that's one thing I've learned. If the employees are happy, then your chances of having missed shipments, your chances of having quality issues coming out of the warehouse are a lot less.
Yeah. And how long does typically an engagement work with you? Yeah.
I've had engagements that are 1 week, up through 9 months. So it really depends on the size of the project, what the ask is, and then ultimately what your goal is.
Yeah. Do you find when you're doing sales that people are generally um, respectful and trusting you? Or, like, I sell marketing for a living, and everybody's been burned by a marketing agency. So when I'm talking to people, they're right away leading with, I'm not sure about this. I know you're trying to get me somehow. I'm
Yeah,
just trying to figure it out. So what do you find in your business?
I I'd say it's a mix. Um, I go in as I'm an engineer. I love to learn. I love to see new operations, new processes. Everyone has, you can literally go into one that I'll use apparel as an example. You can go into one warehouse and they're handling it one way. You go into another one, they're doing it completely different. You're like, well, that's an interesting way to do that. I never thought of that. It's just the unique thing about just in general, how we all think, how we all process things, and how the companies have grown. So to me, just, I look at it as, what are you trying to accomplish? And I mean, I'll be honest, I've had conversations before. It's like, I can't help you with where you're at. Like, you need more orders per day. You need something else. Outside of this, it's just, you can buy a pack table from Grainger. They're, $1,200. It's about the best, just given the size of your business, versus working with companies on, tens of millions in CapEx projects. So it's a wide range, but I go in as, I'm not a salesperson. That's not been any part of my career. I like supporting people. I like helping them accomplish a goal. So when I go in, I'm here to help you. If you don't want to buy from me and you want to go with someone else, okay. I'm here because I have an expertise. My expertise is helping solve getting a unit from A to B in your warehouse, or, to ship it. If there's something that else you're looking for, I have partners I can rely on. I, refer to them, ask them to come in. Or if it's just something that, I haven't done before, I'll just tell them, I haven't done this. I had a customer ask about a safety. Like, can you walk through and do a safety audit? It's like, I can walk through, and based on what I know, I can tell you if I see anything, but I don't know all the, everything that's in OSHA guidelines. I don't have an ergonomics background. Like, I can put you in touch with someone who does, if that's what you like. And I mean, that's me making an introduction. Like, that's not me offering a service, because I just, I'm sure there's those that would say, oh yeah, hire me. And then to go find a resource, I'll tell you who the resource is. Yeah. It's be better for you than it is, for me. And I'd rather have that honesty, be like, oh yeah, he just told me who to go talk to, instead of try to, pay him to then, bring someone else in who doesn't, because they don't have that skill set.
Yeah. Kind of sounds like your philosophy is, stay in your lane, or stick to the knitting, to just kind of not, spread yourself too thin, especially in areas that you're not familiar with.
Yes. That's a good way. Good way to say it.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. All right. Well, I really appreciate your time today. It's an interesting conversation. Went in some good directions. There's some good advice in there. So just tell people where they can get hold of you, or through SupplyTech, and we'll wrap up.
All right. So yeah, Mike Pecker through either LinkedIn or SupplyTechUS.com. Get a hold of us.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Mike. We appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks, Mitch.
Yeah.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed that and found some information in there that is actionable and helps you to grow your business. As you may or may not know, it's in marketing. We've been doing email marketing for companies for 18 years now. And we know a thing or two because we've learned a thing or two. But I want to make you an offer. The first thing we do when we take on a new e-commerce client is to build out their welcome series. It's not flashy, but it is consistently one of the largest revenue generators of all the flows that we install. And most brands don't have a good one. So if you feel like you might not have a good one, I want to give you a head start. Send me your site. Just send me an email to mitch@zinmarketing.com. And I'm about a custom welcome series flow for your brand. The flow, the angles, all the copy that you use. Basically enough material to basically make it live. Free money, if you will. Just done for you. No strings attached. I'll send everything back via email. Send an email to mitch@zinmarketing.com. Free welcome flow.